some of the biggest and most defining albums of the genre this year. They just also happen to be some of the corniest.
Which was the style at the time.
Today we are ranking new metal albums from the year 2000, and we're starting with Linkin Park and Hybrid Theory.
It's like a paranoid broken over my back. It's like a whirlwind inside of my head.
There's a reason why this album made such an impact on me when it came out and dominated the airwaves that summer. It's just a perfectly executed version of the genre and just well-written record in general. So much so that it still holds up for me to this day when listening to the likes of Paper Cut, One Step Closer, Points of Authority, Crawling, and In the End. And catchy singles aside, I also love the deeper cuts like By Myself, A Place for My Head, and even the DJ track Cure for the Itch. Timeless record that at this point I'd hold up with the classics. It is going to perfection. Next we have the Union Underground with An Education in Rebellion.
To be honest, a dead man, yeah. I want it, I need it to make a man, yeah.
I vaguely remember liking this album as a kid, but I couldn't remember much about it, unlike many of the others on this list. The phrases that came to mind were Discount Marilyn Manson and Power Man 5000, but less fun. South Texas Death Ride is kind of a bop, and Turn Me On Mr. Deadman definitely jogged my memory, but the latter quite literally just feels like a complete copycat of When Worlds Collide. Mostly boring and recycled with a few high points that can be enjoyable, but yeah, this one's just going to okay. Then we have Spineshank with The Height of Callousness. Another album I was pretty into back in the day, Asthmatic is a banger opener and the title track right after goes even harder. Some pretty sing-along worthy tracks too, like Synthetic and New Disease. Cyanide 2600 rips. Pretty consistently enjoyable album. I'm gonna put it at fantastic. Then we have Nothingface with Violence.
You say that to be satisfied, but it's alright.
Similar to American Head Charge in some ways, I would say, and a pretty vocal fan base who always points out when I forget to include them, so I made sure to get them on this one. The songs are okay, but the singing is a little meh, and it just lacks some of the infectious punch of my favorites in the genre. I actually always have trouble getting all the way through this record. Can't Wait for Violence and Hidden Hands are pretty good. I'm gonna put this one at good tier. Then we have Primer 55 with Introduction to Mayhem.
You look around, you see we got the most juice. Watch these fuckers jump when I get loose.
This is another album that also came in that scam 15 albums for $30 pack I mentioned in the previous video for $19.99. Heavy emphasis on rap and turntables for almost a 50-50 split with the metal elements on this one. Very catchy opener, and Loose Super Freak Love is pretty infectious. Jeez is a certified banger. Cheesy, maybe even a little bit cringe, but it is fun. Like, I think I actually had more fun on this re-listen than back in the day when I was listening to it. Just a bit overlong for what it is, and the quality dips in the second half, but overall, I think this one fits well at amazing. Yo, we have plenty more albums to go, but if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit the like button. Comment your own rankings of these albums. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Also, I make videos like this at least twice a week, so consider subscribing or even becoming a channel member for some extra perks. But next up, we have Kittie with Spit. Now, I loved this album when it came out, and it still has some bangers for me, but I don't think it has held up as well as a whole. The title track is a sick way to open the record, and Charlotte has a really infectious chorus. I also really love the drumming on Do You Think I'm a Whore and the groove on Raven. But the real spotlight track here continues to be brackish. I still get the urge to break something every time I listen to that one. It ends up on my gym playlist for sure. I'd put this one about on par with the Cold Chamber debut in that it has some real classics, but also a few duds and some inconsistent songwriting that just doesn't hit the same as it did back then, for me personally anyways. Paper Doll, for instance, I just find kind of annoying, but I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Mudvayne with LD50. Another band I loved when I was in high school. I'd even go so far to say that they were one of my favorites at the time when they released this banger. And aside from Dig being one of those defining songs and a new metal meme in its own right, you've also got Internal Primates Forever, Death Blooms, and my personal favorite, Nothing to Gain. Every band member is firing on all cylinders here, especially bassist Rhino and drummer Matthew McDonough. Not to mention the songwriting is more mathy and experimental than it ever would be on any releases from here. I could honestly care less about the other records, but this one is a a defining moment in the genre and for the band, so it is going to perfection. Then we have Earth Crisis with Slither. I must have blocked out that this fairly respected metallic hardcore forerunner had a nu metal phase. And I don't have much to say about it. It's pretty bad. I would say don't even bother unless you're just really morbidly curious, but check out Earth Crisis because they've got some great like formative 90s metalcore or metallic hardcore stuff going on. This one though, it's going to okay. Then we had Taproot with Gift. Such an underrated album. I have probably worn out my CD copy of this one with how many times I've played it. I have not liked any of their other albums, but this one stands tall with some of my favorite rapid-fire alternations between screaming and nasally singing on tracks like Mirror's Reflection, Again and Again, and Emotional Times. Also love the opening track Smile and I, but really this is a headbanger from start to finish for me with both great hooks and that trademark dark, angsty atmosphere of the time. This one I ended up putting at fantastic. It's near perfection though. It is in my like top 10 of the genre overall. Then we have Apartment 26 with Hallucinating. The second album from this industrial nu metal crew that I'd compare to the likes of Orgy and Pitch Shifter, but also with some hip-hop influences scattered throughout. Great mix of both of those sounds on opener backwards. You get those heavy verses and breakbeats, but then also a more hooky, rock-oriented chorus. Well produced, and the electronic elements help it stand out here. Burton C. Bell of Fear Factory also makes a guest appearance on the European version with Void. Also enjoyed Doing It Anyway, sliced beats, and basic breakdown. Far from the best here, but a fun addition that I had not listened to previously. It is going to great tier. Then we have Disturbed with The Sickness. I know a lot of people probably look back on this album fondly, but even as someone who was deep into nu metal at this time, I never really connected with The Sickness. But I will say that I definitely know every word to Down with the Sickness, and there are a couple of other songs on here that I remember pretty well and appreciate, like Stupefy. Likewise, the songwriting can be kind of interesting, and I really like the unique vocals and how they utilize the drumming in an almost tribal way. A lot of people might put this higher since it is definitely another one of those kind of landmark albums for nu metal, but whatever you may think personally, and again, this is just my subjective ranking, I would put it at good tier.
Sorry, not sorry.
Then we have Papa Roach with Infest.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
Another one of those defining records of the era. I remember even people in my freshman football team blasting this song back that summer. Obviously, Last Resort is an undeniable nu metal anthem and probably deserves to be in a top 10 list of genre-defining tracks. But then there are plenty of other solid ones too, like Broken Home, Dead Cell, and Between Angels and Insects, the latter of which was another one of the earlier riffs I learned on guitar. Definitely feels a little dated now, but again, I dig the angst and atmosphere, and I definitely prefer to the more upbeat direction they went from here. Their newer butt rock stuff is just awful in comparison, in my opinion. I'm going to put this one at amazing. Then we have Soulfly with Primitive.
Back to the primitive. Screw all your politics. We got our life to live.
Hot on the heels of the already excellent self-titled debut, Sepultura's Max Cavalera continued to lean into the tribal influences of Roots and fusing them with plenty of nu metal groove. Not to mention a serious who's who of the time with guest spots from Chino Moreno, Corey Taylor, Tom Araya, and more, as well as John Lennon's son Sean on one of my personal favorites here, Sun Song. Other standout tracks for me, Pain, Jump the Fuck Up, Back to the Primitive, and Terrorist. This one is going to perfection. Then we have Ultraspank with Progress.
Catching up.
Kind of an ironic title on this second and final album from this band, who has already simultaneously one of the worst and most nu metal appropriate names in the genre. Snot drummer Fed is also on this record. Catchy enough mix of nu metal and rock on tracks like Push, Crumble, and Click. I'll also say that this has some of the stronger singing vocals on this list. But considering how rabid people were for this sound at the time, it's telling to me that they sold so poorly that they were dropped from the label with this. But frankly, I think that there were groups far more deserving of such a pitiful ending than this band. Like, it's not bad at all. I'm gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Cold with 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage. Another band where I only enjoy one record, but it's a really strong one. Lots of comparisons to Stained here, with this almost feeling like an early draft version of Break the Cycle that came out just a year later. In particular, I would strongly recommend Just Got Wicked with that super memorable hook and dynamic ups and downs, No One and End of the World, all extremely well-written songs that stick with you. And then again, speaking of Stained, there's an acoustic duet at the end called Bleed with Aaron Lewis. I'm gonna put this one at amazing, probably up here. Then we have Godsmack with Awake. I wouldn't exactly call this a nu metal album, it's more of a hard rock, butt rock kind of situation, but there's enough on this one to probably warrant its inclusion. As far as singles go, I heard plenty of the title track and Sick of Life in US Navy recruitment ads, and that opening hook on Awake is admittedly pretty hype. Greed is another head bobber with tons of groove, and tracks like Trippin' and Spiral also have some solid dark atmosphere. Still not an album I loved all the way through or see myself going back too much, but it's enjoyable enough. It's going to great tier. Then we have Snot with Straight Up. Sad that it took the death of vocalist Lynn Strait to make this collaboration happen, but it stands as probably the biggest to ever happen in nu metal before or since. The music, all of which is quite good on its own, is performed largely by Lynn's remaining band members, but each track also has a vocal performance from a big name. We're talking Serj Tankian of System of a Down, Jonathan Davis of Korn, Corey Taylor, Des Fafara from Cold Chamber, Max Cavalera, Lejon Witherspoon, and even spoken word from Ozzy Osbourne, among others. My personal favorites are Divide with Incubus's Brandon Boyd and Requiem, again with Corey Taylor. Not every track is great, but overall this is a must listen for you nu metal fans. It is going to amazing. Then we have Project 86 with Drawing Black Lines. The second record from this long-running Christian nu metal and rock band that is still quietly releasing new albums to this day. More pretty generic and uninspired sounding stuff. Again, not terrible, perfectly listenable, just not interesting or particularly engaging. Me Against Me is decent, and I like the sound of the bass on this album, but it's pretty skippable overall, I would say, so it's going to okay. Then we have Seotaiji with Ultramania. One of the few albums I had never heard of before until doing this list. Seotaiji, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that exactly right, but this is a Korean musician, this being his second solo album, but his sixth, counting his initial 4 with Seotaiji and the Boys. Apparently he was also instrumental in the transition to free expression in Korean pop music, so props for that. Apparently Ultramania, Feel the Soul, and Internet War were all #1 singles, and this was a best-selling album in Korea. Songs are mostly performed in Korean, which definitely makes for a unique one on this list. The music ain't half bad either. All of the other usual hallmarks are there too, from the rapping and turntables to crunchy, groovy riffs. I could see this one even like rising up on the chart over time, but for now it is going to good tier. Then we have Head PE with Broke. Even though I don't care much for the term guilty pleasure, since I don't think you should ever really feel embarrassed about the music you like, this album probably fits that list. The lyrics range from cringe to outright pretty awful at times, but then again, there's nothing here that isn't also on some of the biggest hip-hop albums of the 90s. Different times is all.
I love that kind of misogyny.
Yes. The phrase that came up in the Discord was degenerate, and I definitely think that word fits here. But if you can get past that, these songs are catchy as fuck. Like super infectious opener and Killing Time, also enjoy Waiting to Die, and another solid Serj Tankian and Morgan Lander collab here on Feel Good. The big tracks here were Bartender, Crazy Legs, and Swan Dive, and I'm also pretty partial to the softer The Meadow closing things out. Unique fusions here of hardcore, punk, hip-hop, world music, and reggae. I'm putting it at fantastic. Then we have Nonpoint with Statement. Getting some Spanish language nu metal on the board here with this band's debut. Never been a huge fan of these guys outside the song Rabia from their third album, but every time I revisit this one ends up being a good time overall. Solid opener in Mind Trip, love the attitude kicking off Victim. Endure makes for a strong, more kind of rock-oriented track. Definitely not something that rises high for me personally, but still pretty strong overall. It is going to great tier. Then we have Hamlet with El Inferno. Album 5 from this also Spanish-speaking band out of Madrid, Spain, who are actually credited as being foundational to alternative metal in general. Unfortunately, I just couldn't really connect with this album either. More generic sounding guitar work and pretty boring songwriting. I see some love out there for this one, and more power to you again if you love it, but it just came off as kind of dull for me, so landed at okay. Then we have Limp Bizkit with Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. Just a year after the already well-received and chart-topping Significant Other, love 'em or hate 'em, they came back with another explosive record here. Dumb title and weird cover art aside, this was the record of that year. Like, once more, hitting #1 on Billboard alongside major records from NSYNC, Eminem, and Britney Spears. And I gotta say, dumb as the lyrics can be, once more, these are pristinely written and well-performed tracks that still get my motor running in the likes of My Way, Rollin', and the Mission Impossible track, Take a Look Around. I'm putting this one at fantastic.
Introducing the chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water.
And then we have Deftones with White Pony. As I just recently mentioned in my best albums of 2000 overall list, for over 2 decades now, this has held firm as one of my overall favorite albums of all time. This is where Deftones really situated themselves as a band that would be arguably the last one standing, still making great albums to this day, and really kind of transcended the genre. So many career favorites for me here. You've got ragers like Feiticeira and Elite, but woven alongside more hypnotic atmospheric tracks like Digital Bath, Teenager, and the haunting shrieks of Knife Party. Then of course there's Change and the Maynard James Keenan feature on Passenger. Powerful record from start to finish. It is my favorite on this list. It is going to perfection. Y'all check out this playlist for more new metal videos and rankings, and also check out this video if you want something more tailored specifically to you. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.